First item, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Gary Barrett, and apparently he may be able to make it later. Councillor Woodhead, Councillor Joe Jones, and Councillor Pierre Gilsher. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any councillors have a declaration of interest in relation to disposable pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests in any agenda item? Councillor Skilton.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a non-pecuniary interest in item 10B.
Oh, right. Thank you. Any more? No? Right. Item 3, Chairman's announcements. I don't really have any announcements, I don't think. Except I would just congratulate our public realm team on the urgent necessary action taken regarding the flooding of the playgrounds and being able to put up notices of closure, etc., etc. And it's very good that we can be seen to respond to these things quickly. Item 4, public open session. Do we have any public on the Zoom, Catherine? We have none present, so presumably there is no public present. Invited speaker, there is none. Item 6, members' questions. Does any member have any questions? No? All right. Item 7, minutes and recommendations of meetings. So if you go through these, right on page 5 of the pack, for content, accuracy first. Page 6, any comments? Page 7? No. Page 8? Page 9? No, on accuracy, right. Matters arising, page 5. Yeah, matters arising. Page 6? No. Page 7? Page 8? Page 9? No, no matters arising. So we're now going on items for consideration, project status update, which is a brief report just asking us to note the progress being made in various areas. Nothing, there are no specific projects report. Franklin's recreation ground we've mentioned, that's temporarily closed, but no doubt there is a job there to do. Well, would you like to do an update? There's a cleaning job, presumably, once the water goes down, is there?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. Yeah, absolutely, there will be. Once there's a bit of dry weather, that's what the public realm team will be focusing on, clearing that up and cleansing Franklin's and other play areas. In terms of some of the other items on this report here, I'll draw members' attention to the Brunel play area, where the project is now, the implementation of all the new equipment has now finished. It's gone in place, subsurfacing's in place. The inspection for that area is happening next Monday, I believe. It's booked in, and then it's a case of allowing the grass to grow in and kind of establish itself, essentially, over however long that'll take.
Yeah, we saw some pictures. Oh, Bruno, some pictures of that the other day, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. And going on here, I think just it's worth highlighting actually the fact that on Jubilee Recreation Ground, public realm team have removed the correct section of the fencing and installed some barriers which are there to kind of slow down any approaching bicycles and other things.
Did you update the Brunel as well?
Yeah. I think you should have received pictures today, the benches. Yeah. So obviously we've refurbished them, which has saved us a bit of money. And we'll look to reinstall them at some point next week. Yeah. They've came up. I was absolutely over the moon the way they've came up. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, just to mention the transformation of Stratton Cemetery, that's under a working group. I don't know. Do you have anything to say about that, Councillor Knight, about in terms of when that's likely to complete and present a report?
We were supposed to have a working group meeting last week, but unfortunately, due to sickness, that had to be rescheduled. I believe that's now on Thursday. So really, I don't have anything to report at this time.
So are you hoping that that will produce a final report?
Yes, and then we should have a conversation about whether that should come to PLOS or council, depending on when the
Yes,
next
okay,
PLOS meeting.
yes.
Is it possible we could run the money, Chair? Is it possible?
Yes, please, Peter, yes, right.
If members remember, several weeks ago, I did a detailed paper on the capital borrowing for the council. And we're now at a point in time where we're able to give more concrete and detailed information for consideration. What I'd like to do is to try now and co-author a detailed paper with the chair of PLOS and also with the chairman of Finance and General Purposes. And we're meeting early next week to try and look at a first draft paper connected to that. By coincidence, we have to have the first of our Linzell's meetings on the 22nd of the month. And I think it would be convenient to use the reserve space that we have to have it almost like a single item agenda, which looks at the capital borrowing going forward of the council, and to look at that in great detail because it will need a lot of consideration. So on the agenda for next council is a proposal that we use that date to have a detailed conversation. And I think that the chair of PLOS and the chair of FMGP are supportive of that approach. And I hope that other members will be as well. So we'll bring lots of detailed information broken down by each individual project for you to critique and then to decide whether or not you would like any additional information or whether you'd like to progress towards potential borrowing or how you would like to source individual projects. There's a range of initiatives in there. Thank you.
Okay, one comment I would like on signage. This is something that we agreed in January and we seem to have made very little progress. And I hope we will be making some progress on that in the very near future.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's an item which is being picked up in that report as well, which the town clerk's just mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed there was a note, a public realm manager sent a notice out about putting signage on the vehicles. Has that actually been done now? So going around town with Biggleswade Town Council written on the side of them. Lots of people are saying, oh, I always wondered what that little truck, who that little truck belonged to that comes along and does all the gardening and repairs the flower beds. Yeah, that's good.
Like Dad, there's only one vehicle doesn't have it at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
So that vehicle's getting replaced as part of the ongoing progress. So the new one will get done when it arrives.
Yeah.
So that'll be everybody will have all the sign writing on there.
Good. I think that's good.
Got a bit of a presence in the town now, which is good.
Yes. Yes. Right. Does anybody have any questions or comments about it, the content of this status report, Councillor?
Well, I'd just like to follow up on the bit about the Brunel equipment and the fact that you've that work's been done. It's really good. But I think it gives us an opportunity to look at all the perhaps other areas as well. Given that we've done such a good job there, that I personally like the fact that they're black but the finish looks really good. But it's an opportunity elsewhere. So. Given that the work we're going to be doing on other play areas in due course, and I know the public realm manager's been looking at sort of what we can do with our equipment. It's good to see that we've got the sort of the bins and the benches in this condition. I think it's helpful. We can consider other things as well.
Yeah, please do, Peter.
Just to confirm that when we do frame that paper early next week, we're picking up a range of different furniture within the town council, and also we are looking at the other playgrounds that at least are there as options and how we best move forward. Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments?
Sorry. I'd just like to add regarding painting of some of the equipment. We've now purchased the paint. It's because of a long drawn out process because we had to identify all the proper RAL numbers for the paint. So we've now achieved that. We've took delivery of paint now to paint specific pieces of equipment in certain play areas to improve them. Yeah, so that will be an ongoing process over the next few months. Obviously, we'll keep members updated to what play areas we're going to do and what ones we have to close off. And we'll obviously work around school terms moving forward. Yeah, and hopefully we'll start to lift the standard. Yeah.
Good, fine, thank you. Councillor Alban, sorry.
So if I just make just one thing, does that, I notice in the report, it does mention routine maintenance taking place at Franklin's. I guess a bit challenged at the moment, but is that some of the areas that you're talking about?
There's equipment in Franklin's that requires painting and a bit of tidying up, and that'll be happening as part of the routine maintenance going forward now. Yeah. And there's a couple of bits of some. I'm not sure what you climb, the things that the kids climb up on so those sort of things could on some of the bits of equipment. On where we had new equipment go in, some of the older equipment didn't have those bits replaced. So that's be good to see that happening as well, because it's good equipment. It's just it just needs a little bit TLC, which is good to see we're doing it.
Okay, fine. Councillor Alban, were you going to say something? Oh, yeah. Any other comments on this or questions, Peter?
All I was going to say, just a quick observation and a more detailed one another day, but I think you've highlighted an area that we've tried to focus upon, which is we have invested a lot of money in Franklin's. It's frankly, it would be a very difficult challenge to do that for all play areas. So it makes more sense, if we can, to have a public realm team that has the skills and capacity to apply effective maintenance across the range of play areas. If that can reduce our financial commitments going forward, it seems a sensible thing to do.
Okay, right. So moving on. Burial and memorial regulations. Now these are a draft. These have been looked at carefully. I think myself. Were you involved in this, Colin? We certainly have some meetings with officers about this to try and bring it all together, bring it up to date. But yes, right. Page 14. So I suppose we could. I mean, the recommendation is that we agree this document, and it goes that the wording and everything is agreed, but obviously the fees need to go to FMGP to be finalised. But the wording of the regulations will be down to us here. Yes. So does anybody have any comment to make about any of this wording? There's quite a lot here. Councillor Alban.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got some observations on spellings and grammar, but also I've got some queries about some of the sections. So firstly, so page 18. There's a section 18 there, and little a. It's just the spelling of curbstones. The original spelling, which was correct in British English, has been replaced by American English version.
Yeah, well, if I may say so, this was raised at our meeting to go through it, okay. And it was made very clear that the K is the correct spelling, but that obviously has not been translated through to the final document. Okay. So you're quite right, Councillor Alban, and that does need to be corrected. Yeah.
Also on page 20, at the top of the page, there. Oh, missed one out. But yeah, at the top of the page there, Strimmers has got an unnecessary apostrophe.
Yeah.
Going back a page, page 19.
Well, I think the apostrophe is marked as being deleted, isn't it? Actually.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It has. Okay, it's my eyesight. Okay, so going back a page to page 19, on section 26. So it reads at the first bit: the owner of the exclusive rights of burial or their estate, and is has been changed to are. I think that should remain an is, because it refers to the owner. Yeah. And finally, on the
yes, that's quite right. That needs correcting, then, doesn't it? Yeah.
And finally, on the spelling and grammar bit. So page 21. So section 47, which was 37, the section number seems to be misplaced there.
Yeah, I suppose that's the case. You're not quite sure what it's going to look like when you remove all the.
Yeah.
So that does need to be the tracking, but that, yeah, you're right. That needs to be make sure that is correctly annotated.
Okay. And I've got some other comments, the kind of queries. So page 17. Page 17. So section 8. So it's the classification of a non-resident has been changed from 3 years to 10 years. I think Councillor Strawn has brought this up in the past, and it could. I wonder if this needs a slight tweaking, because there could be some people who move out of Biggleswade into care homes but still wish to be buried in Biggleswade. So that may get in the way of that person's wishes. So I wonder if that could be looked at, reworded perhaps. I'm not quite sure what the solution might be.
So some sort of alternative wording rather than just changing the number.
Well, maybe there needs to be an element of discretion allowed in particular cases. Perhaps that's what it is.
Okay, well, perhaps we can think about something like that. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. So I think it's a good point that perhaps it's a little too strict. I think generally when we reviewed this, we tried to remove officer discretion because that seemed to be an area where officers could be put under pressure to make exceptions. And then once you've made one exception, you have to make the same exception to everyone because you have to treat everyone fairly. So I'd be more comfortable if it was a rule that was enforced, but maybe it could be worded in a different way. So for example, a resident is someone who has lived in the parish of Biggleswade for 10 of the last 15 years or 10 of the last 20 years or something like that. So they've lived here for a significant period of time in a larger time span. And maybe that would be a way to address the point that you raised.
That seems sensible.
Yeah, perhaps that's something, Peter, you can take away and see if you can think of a different way of putting it that achieves because I mean, the obvious case is what was mentioned is the person who's lived here for 30 years, their whole life, then goes to a care home for 4 years and dies and wants to be buried, and they're being charged a higher rate, which doesn't seem right, does it? Yeah. So if we can think of a different way of putting it, that would be better. Councillor Foster.
I'm just conscious that subject to, if depending on what other comments come up, it might be that if the only hold up is that maybe it's something we could try and sort of come up with some appropriate wording this evening, so that we don't then have to revisit this again. That would be helpful, I think. So let's see where we get to with other comments, and then maybe come back to this one and get some agreement between us. If that's helpful.
Okay, Councillor Strawn, you had a. Did you have any further comments, Councillor Alban? Did you have any?
I do have, so but I'll.
Well, no, please.
Okay.
Let's finish your point.
So again, on page 17, so section 11. So the last sentence is only residents can pre-purchase plots and no plot can ever be reserved. This is a question really. So can a pre-purchase plot be reserved? I mean, is purchasing a plot reserving it?
Well, you're purchasing a plot, but it's not in any specific location. So
the pre-purchase is not in a specific.
Yes, location. That's the point that's being made, I think.
Okay. Well, that explains it. So taken with section 10, I guess that's right. Okay, so that's fine. And just got two more. Sorry to hog the microphone. So page 18. Section 18, the last point there, point F. So there's an extra 12 inches added to the maximum height of 4 feet of a stone. I just wondered what that covers. So we've got a rule at the beginning that says a headstone may not exceed 4 feet. And this point at the end, which says it can't go above 5 feet. So I'm just confused as to what that really covers. That's probably a very good explanation for it.
Well, Karim, do you have any comment, explanation of that?
It's essentially any additions there, which means things like crucifixes or any such other thing would be allowed.
Or a
up to-
statue or something. So
Yeah,
it's 4
or a
feet high,
statue,
but then
yeah.
it's got a statue
Yeah.
on top of it. I think that's the point that's being made.
Fine. And finally, you'll be pleased to hear, page 21 and section 47. So the last sentence there, as in some instances, it could be seen as a nuisance. It's talking about photography and video in the cemetery. I just see that as superfluous. It's strictly prohibited. I don't think it needs to be there.
Sorry, which thing? Which?
The last part of that says, photography, etc., is strictly prohibited, as in some instances.
Which paragraph are you talking about now? 37.
Well, it's old 37, new 47.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
What do you
I just
think the
think
whole paragraph, sure, that whole thing should be taken out then?
The last part, as in some instances, and the rest of it. So I don't think it's necessary to explain the
Oh, right,
why it should
okay,
be
so you're just
left.
saying, take out the last bit. Are we happy with taking that out then? Okay. Okay, we've got, I hope we're noting this down, yes. All right, thank you, Councillor Strawn.
Yes, just following on that, minor points generally, but I think one point of clarification should be consistency of wording. Because at the start, it would be helpful, I think, if we had Biggleswade Town Council mentioned specifically right at the top of the agreement. But after that, we've got everything ranging from Biggleswade Town Council, the Town Council and the Council, rather than having one definition. It's also elsewhere in other policy documents tonight where we've got council and BTC. Could we please have consistency through the document of a definition of who we are and what we are, rather than having loads of different definitions? One observation that I've got on page 16, there's reference to water table. I trust we've got no issues with water tables that have arisen during the last week, because I think if it's ever going to arise, it would have arisen now. So I assume that the depth they're going to it satisfies the water table, because the water table is quite high here generally. On the point of page 17, non-residents and residents, Councillor Allbone's already raised that point, but I think possibly some provision might arise where a resident's child, say, who lived in Biggleswade, died and wanted to come back to be buried. And rather on the not totally dissimilar point, paragraph 11 there, no plot can be reserved. But if you buy a plot, you buy a plot. You don't reserve a plot per se. Otherwise, everybody just reserve a plot at some stage at the time of dying rather than in advance. So I would have thought, and I think historically we probably have had people being able to reserve a plot at a specific place. Say there was wanted to bury a family together, they might want to reserve buy a couple of plots at a time. If they bought the plots, they bought the plots. I don't see that. I don't see why there's reference to reservation in that respect. They either buy a plot or they don't. Moving on to page.
Well, that's that's quite a significant point, actually, isn't it? I think we wanted to make sure that you could not reserve the location of it. Do you want to have anything more to say about this, Councillor Knight?
I'm going back to the conversation we had. So I think where we got to, and hopefully the document reflects that, is that when you buy a plot will be allocated at that point, and it will always be the next one in turn. So you can't choose the plot, but it's not that the plot is allocated when it's first used, because then we'd have to keep records of exactly how many plots we'd sold and hold some back. And I think the feeling from officers was that was administratively too complicated. So at the point that you purchase a plot, you will be allocated the next plot. So if the terms allow you to have 2 plots and you want 2 adjacent plots, the only way you could do that is to buy 2 at the same time. Because next time, if you came back a year later, you would be issued a plot somewhere else. But that was the principle. You always get the next plot in turn, and they are allocated at the point you purchase them.
I think that's really the point that was causing me concern, was whether the plot, it was implying that plot wasn't actually allocated when you purchased it. So it is actually allocated a plot, not because that's effectively you buy a plot in advance of your death and you're effectively reserving that particular place in the future.
So then you would know which plot that is.
Yes.
But you can't cherry pick.
Yeah, no, I agree with cherry picking.
Okay. So what I said earlier is not strictly true, and that you are given a specific location, but it's got to be the next one in line. And you've got, if you want, as you're talking about husband and wife.
Well,
then
perhaps
have-
that could
you've
just
got
be
to buy
clarified in the wording, because it wasn't clear to me when looking at it. Moving on to the next.
Yeah, well, maybe that is something that we could try and make a bit clearer, that is what we mean.
Moving on to the next page, again, I'd noticed curbstones, but ironically at the bottom of page 19, we've got the curbstones we would like rather than the curbstones we don't like. So
Yeah, I think that does need to be
So
changed
that's to be
throughout
addressed.
your document.
But
yeah.
what really struck me was in paragraph 15, second line, the words issuance. Shouldn't it be issuing? Issuance is I'm not sure I've ever seen that word before.
Which paragraph are you talking about?
Paragraph 15, second line, second word, it says issuance.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The issuing
The issue-
of a valid.
Or the issue or the issuing, yes. All right, if we're noting all these down.
And just moving on, the other point that came to mind was on page 21 with regard to dogs and the lack of dogs being allowed. People who need assistance dogs or guide dogs should be allowed in there. And I think that needs to be clarified. I appreciate the point about dogs as a general rule, but there are exceptions where people will need some kind of assistance. So perhaps that could be looked at and possibly included with the exception of assistance or guide dogs for the user.
Do members want to give some clarity in regard to the other outstanding issue?
Yeah, well, are we coming? Well, let's see. Does anybody else have any further comments on this? We have the point that Councillor Foster is coming back to, but.
Sorry, this is
Councillor
just,
Stilton,
this is probably labouring the point, but this is about the reserving of the plots and the selling of them. If somebody bought a specific plot well in advance, or lots of people did, then other people bought other plots, we would end up with we could potentially end up with large gaps between the graves. And I thought the whole reason we wanted to kind of clarify the sale of the plots was to make it a more uniform way we're filling up the cemetery, to make it seem a more pleasant and well-ordered place. But I may have got that wrong, so I think I missed the last meeting.
Well, perhaps that's something Councillor Knight can talk about.
If I may, and maybe officers would like to jump in. So we did talk about those two options. So one option was you purchase a plot, but it's not allocated until you need to make the first interment, which would then mean you would fill up the cemetery in a much more uniform way, versus you buy a plot and the plot is allocated at that time. And the recommendation from officers was that if we sold a plot but didn't allocate it, we would have to keep records of the number of plots that we had sold but not allocated, and there was a fear that we could end up overselling and then finding out that we'd sold more than we had space. So that was why we sort of moved towards the allocation at the point of purchase. I don't know if Harry wants to comment.
The policy document clearly states it's about sequencing, and it's a clear sequence of purchases and plots. I think we need to get that right, and I think what we've added in the policy will correct that. I think, the sequencing of it, so it's not like cherry picking like Councillor Knight said. It's done in a sequence, yeah. So it's the next plot in line, basically. That's how it will be done.
Yeah, I get that. So is that how other people, other councils run their cemeteries? Is that the norm? Like, maybe that'd be helpful. I don't know if we're too far along now, but.
Well, apparently we believe it is the way other people do it, then, is it? Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, I don't plan to be in there anytime soon, so thank you.
No, well, good luck. Good luck, Henry. Councillor Knight, are you wanting to answer that point? Just to clarify.
Well, I was going to try and make a bit of a proposal around something else, actually. So I think.
Well, Councillor Strawn is next. It's a new point.
Right, just on the point Councillor Skilton's
Oh.
raised, perhaps officers might like to just look at a couple of other councils to see how they actually work with their priorities in their areas. It may just give some help and clarification and wording, if nothing else.
Okay, well, perhaps you can do that, and just in case we do need to perhaps come back and look at that again. Councillor Knight, you.
Okay, then. So looking at clause 8, which is the definition of a resident versus a
right.
non-resident.
Coming back. Yeah.
So the idea here is that we have a duty to provide plots for residents, and the privilege of pre-purchasing a plot should really be purely for residents. And a resident should be somebody who has had a significant connection to Biggleswade and been a resident at some point. Now, of course, if someone purchases a plot and then moves away, that's their plot. We can't take plots away. So the scenario here is if someone has moved away and then wishes to buy a plot, or they've never lived here and wishes to buy a plot. And the intent is that if you're someone who's never lived here, you can't pre-purchase one. So you can still buy one at the point of internment, but you can't buy one in advance and reserve it and essentially get to pay today's rate for a plot that you may not use for 20 years. So what I'm proposing then is the guidance or the rule around what defines a resident. So I suggest to be a resident, you must have lived in the parish of Biggleswade for the last 12 months or for 5 out of the last 10 years. How does that sound? So you lived here for 12 months or 5 of the last 10 years. Now, if that isn't true, you can still buy a plot when you need it as a non-resident. So we're not saying you can't be buried here, it's just you can't pre-purchase it.
Yeah, the only thing is that the care home situation would still apply if the person was in the care home for 6 years, wouldn't it? They could, that's true, yes, you can't, yes, okay. Councillor Strawn.
Just a question there. What about people born in Biggleswade? What's residence rule there in terms of someone who wishes to come back to where they started from?
Well, at the end of the day, all you're talking about is a higher fee. So there's nothing to stop them doing that. It's just they have to pay a little bit more for it, that's all.
Well, that's right. So if you were born here and then you didn't purchase a plot when you lived here and then you moved away, and in 20 years' time, if it was 5 out of the last 10 years, you wouldn't be able to pre-purchase a plot, but at the time of your death, your estate could purchase a plot for you at the non-resident rate. Now, if you think 5 in the last 10 is too mean, we could change the numbers. But my starting point is lived here for 12 months or for 5 in the last 10.
Yeah, I think we need to just make it clear that a non-resident can come into the cemetery. It's just that they can't pre-purchase and they have to pay a higher fee. So yeah.
I'm happy to second that.
Right.
Can I make
Make
another
a comment.
suggestion? So
Yeah, please.
Councillor Knight, I think referenced having been a resident for the last 12 months, but the original the updated version said has lived in Boundary within the last 3 years. So to some extent, we're reducing that. And I have no problem with that if that's what members think. But it's reducing it, the residents, unless I'm missing the point here, am I?
I think we may be slightly misaligned. So what I'm proposing is you have to have lived here for 12 months. So it previously said you had to live here at some point in the last 3 years, not that you had to live here for 3 years. So I'm proposing to qualify as a resident, you must have lived here for 12 months, for the last 12 months. So if you moved here a month ago, you wouldn't qualify as a resident until you've been here for 12 months. Because it seems daft if someone can move here and then claim they're a resident after a week. So I'm proposing you have to have lived here for 12 months or for 5 of the last 10.
So can I come back? The reason I was questioning it is in the updated version, it says resident is classed as someone who's lived within Biggleswade parish boundary in the last
3 years, yeah.
Which, so unless I'm missing it, the point the change would be within the last 12 months or 5 years in the last 10. So the 12 months bit that means it's lived within Biggleswade within 1 year rather than the last 3 years. Have I still not got it wrong?
So I'm saying you must have lived here for the whole of the last 12 months.
It's actually tight.
It's actually tight.
It's tighter, yeah, it's a tighter.
It's been a
So
long
it's for the
day.
whole of the last 12 months or 5 out of the last 10 years in this paragraph 8 here. Have we noted this down?
Okay,
Well, yes. Councillor Strawn.
Just looking at thinking of the definition of lived and the point raised about what is actually living here. Perhaps it might be better and a clearer definition for adults that they've been on the electoral roll for Biggleswade, which actually, if they're on the electoral roll, then I think they should probably qualify because they're deemed to be living here effectively, regardless of how long they've been here, rather than having an argument over whether someone moved in on the 2nd of October and died on the 30th of September. They haven't lived there for a year. So perhaps if we could tighten it up or have a clearer definition. So if they're on the electoral roll, they're effectively treating themselves as classed as a resident of Biggleswade, and the children of people on the electoral roll would qualify under that. Well,
Would you like to propose an amendment?
I'd love to propose an amendment on that basis, that a resident be classed as someone who's on the electoral roll for Biggleswade, or the children of such a party.
What about the 5 out of the last 10 years bit?
Well, I think that if they've been on the electoral roll, I think the same rule could apply there. If it's on the
Yes,
electoral
if
roll.
you've been on the electoral roll for 5 of the last 10 years.
It's a lot clearer than living and then trying to prove you've been living there, because you can just imagine someone dying and then you having a 3-week argument with the council over whether you were living here and qualify for a rate before you could get buried.
Okay, so are we clear what the amendment is then?
but there's a
Well,
proposal.
before we get on to electoral roll,
Because there was a proposal and it was seconded, wasn't it?
it was seconded, yes, but right, so the proposal has been made by Councillor Knight, seconded, I think, by Councillor Skilton, is before us. Before we vote, Councillor Strawn is proposing an amendment to bring in that living means being on the electoral roll. So we need to vote on the amendment. Well, so we need a seconder for, does that amendment have a seconder? Yes. Right, let's vote on the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment, please show. Against. Unanimous. Right, so it's now electoral roll is the definition of residence within. Right.
Summarise it. So then my understanding
Yes,
is we are saying a resident is someone who is on the electoral roll or someone who has been on the electoral roll for 5 of the last 15 years, or their children.
Right. Are you happy with this now, Peter? Pardon?
Or their minor children.
Slight loophole. on this
Councillor
one.
Thomas.
I've got children and they don't live anywhere near Biggleswade, never lived.
Minor children.
Okay, that's fine.
Nothing. Okay, is everybody happy? We know what we're voting on. Right, well. Are you happy with
Can I
this?
just point something out before you make,
No, I do. I just,
if my understanding is correct, then the electoral roll is taken at a given time of the year. Yeah. If you're lucky enough to be taken within that period of time, then you're recognised on the roll, aren't you? If you could almost be here, yeah.
I could respond. So my understanding, having recently had myself added to the electoral roll somewhere, is that you can essentially contact the council at any point and then they will add you. It normally takes about a month to be added, but it doesn't have to happen at a set point in the year. You could apply to be added.
Yes. Right. Are we okay with, we know what we're voting on then, do we? Right, all those in favour, please show. Against, abstentions. Right, thank you very much. So are you clear, are we clear with that one? Yes, good, right, okay, fine. Right, are there any other comments? Councillor Alban.
Okay, yeah, one I forgot about. So page 18, section 15. It talks about the permit will include recordable records. Is recordable records a term I don't understand, or is that?
So can you clarify, what does that mean, Karim?
It should just be, I think that's a bit of tautology there. It should be just records rather than recordable records, just records.
Right, so the word recordable should be taken out then, right? Councillor Foster.
Just in relation to on page 17, page 16 and moving on to page 17, which is item 6. If you look at item 6 on page 816, it says undertakers will be responsible for, and then there's all the relevant subheadings and subcategories. Then when you move on to page 17, item F, it then specifies the gravedigger. So I guess there's been a bit pedantic here, but we're talking about the undertakers will be responsible for, the gravedigger is responsible, and the gravedigger. So there's just some slight wording changes need to happen there so that it doesn't specify about the undertakers for the most of those items, and then you've got another couple. The last couple of bits relate to that are not specifically undertaker relating. Did that make sense to anyone, given my confusion on the other item? And I just clarify, the reason I got confused on the other item wasn't to do with at any time during the last 3 years, as opposed to, which I didn't clarify. So that's where my confusion was. So
I think here, if you look at the preceding, they start with the words ensuring. So it's ensuring the gravedigger fills in the grave with topsoil, ensuring the grave
so there's some
provides the soil.
Absolutely. So there's just some wordings that needs to go in.
That needs to be amended as well.
Chairman, if I may, and I think given that the amount of changes on here, it's to be expected there's going to be some sort of minor thing. So to be fair, I mean it's a massive change within the document. So I think it's good that members are looking through this, and it's really helpful, I think, for officers for us to be able to go through it. So not in any way criticism of the document, it's just making sure that we get in it so it's the best document we can.
Yeah. So we need to put in ensuring the gravedigger. Right, any other comments on this? Because subject to all the comments, do we have a proposal that this should be accepted and submitted to F&GP for confirmation of fees? So, right, Councillor Thomas is proposing. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Can I say subject to changes we've mentioned?
Subject to all the changes that we've mentioned in terms of wording and grammar.
I propose that we accept this.
Right, is there a seconder for that motion? Yes, thank you, Councillor. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Unanimous, I think.
Well done. Good.
Fine, okay, thank you very much. Right, I think that's very useful. We've got through that. The next item is football pitch bookings policy terms and conditions. Right, so just looking at this, I mean, does anybody have any comments to the document that's here? That's quite lengthy. Does anybody any officer wish to make any comments on this, to introduce it to us all now? Councillor, no, it's all right. If you don't really have, if you don't want to, then it's okay. It's clear, I think. Yeah.
I can just, obviously we've went through it in great detail. And there's lots of areas we've tightened up for the benefit of the whole football fraternity within Biggleswade, all the clubs, and also for the general purpose, the use of the football facilities for the general public in general. So you'll see there's a few track changes there. You'll see regarding storage, we've tightened up in the storage. Obviously you'll see that in the policy document. The use of floodlighting as well. you'll see in the policy document has been amended. And obviously there's reference to charging in different ways as well regarding electricity usage and things like that. Yeah.
Right, thank you, Harry. Comments, Councillor Alban, did you have some comments on this?
Yeah, I got a few. On page 27, section 2, the last part of that. So it says pitches can be booked out through the football season. I just think that might read better if it said throughout rather than
Throughout,
through.
yes.
And the second point is page 28. So at the top of the page there, it says a document from an accredited football organisation demonstrating the status of the club would suffice. Now, in the rest of that paragraph, it's got will, and I think will suffice might be better than would suffice.
Okay.
Just got two more. So page 29, section 6E. The last sentence there, it says the club or public will report to the town council any maintenance problems. The club is defined at the top of the document, but I'm not sure what public is and what it means.
So, can I speak on behalf of Harry? So I think what we're saying is that the football, there's two options. Either a club hires the pitch, or a member of the public who might want to have some organised match hires a pitch. Is that correct, Harry? Yeah.
Perhaps that should be hirer. Yeah.
The hirer will report to the town council. Yeah.
Okay, and I just got one more. You'll be pleased to. So page 30, at the top of the page, it's got running over from the previous pages. The club will return all keys, and then it's just got a singular key at the top of that. I think because they could have more than one key. There's alternative key holders, etc. So I think that should read keys. Keys held by the club rather than key held by the
Keys held, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Alban. Councillor Skilton.
Thank you. Just on page 27, it says the council uses Squarespace scheduling an online booking system. I don't know what that is, but is there a chance that we may not use them in the future? So if we change that, we'd have to change the terms and conditions. I don't know if it has to be that specific. And just in relation to adding the term hirer as well as club, I think there are probably some other paragraphs in here that would benefit from the club or hirer now going in to make it clearer.
Perhaps you can have a look through that at some point and just look on that point. And regarding, yeah, I mean, that's a good point about Squarespace scheduling, but I think it would be a fairly simple, if we ever did change the software, it'd be simple enough to change the rules, wouldn't it?
Doesn't,
Sorry.
Chairman, I don't think it needs to be in there. I think, do we need to record it in there? It's a policy document, not a specific operational, so take it out.
The council uses an online booking system.
But yeah, the town council uses an online,
Yeah.
just move,
Yeah.
take Squarespace scheduling out altogether, yeah. So, right, thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Strawn.
Yes, similar observation to the previous policy with cemeteries that we were looking at. Could we please have consistency between Biggleswade Town Council, which is then referred to as BTC, then it's got various references throughout the document to the Town Council and the Council. Could we have either a definition at the start, and if we're going to use an abbreviated form for the Biggleswade Town Council, could we have the same abbreviated form used throughout the document? The other point that I noticed in particular and was on page 30, cancellations not notified to the council within 1 working day will be cancelled. What I'm thinking of here is cancellations might occur because a referee decides the pitch is unplayable, which might not be decided until the day of the time of the match starting. Now, what is the situation with regard to payment there? So that's the question. And the other question I've got is, before this document came to council tonight, had any members of the council actually looked through it and read it through beforehand, before it was put into this agenda?
I think we did, didn't we? This is one of the ones we went through. Yes, yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you. But the question of the cancellation situation remains when it's something that is effectively beyond the control of the club because the condition might not be safe.
Councillor Foster.
Item 7. The only item that's not in blue is the word dialing. Does that mean dialing is the only change, or does that mean it's the other way round? Or is it just a simple formatting change, which means it's a track change? That's fine, thank you. So the dialing is the only format that didn't change, which is an interesting concept. Thank you.
Where is that?
Yes.
No, dialing.
I was just looking at the track changes, thinking, well, what's changed on here? But it's formatting. So
Yes, it's formatting. It'll be the only word that was underlined. So
Yeah, all right.
Yep.
Councillor Strawn.
Yes, so sorry, just noting on page 29, item 7, the very first paragraph of that. This agreement sets out the conditions and arrangements for the hire by Biggleswade Town Council. Biggleswade Town Council isn't actually hiring it, it's hiring it out. And then it says the council and club make a booking of football pitches and facilities at Eagle Farm Road, Stratton Way and the Lakes Biggleswade, the facilities managed by the Biggleswade Town Council, the council. That seems to, I think, needs a bit of tidying up. I'm not sure what it should be tidied up at, because I've really only noticed it, but it needs tidying up so that it's a little bit clearer, please.
Yes, you can notice that to do that. Any other comments? Carrie, would you
Can I
like to comment?
just go back to Councillor Strawn's previous point regarding cancellations? Page 28, item 5A, you see cancellations are not notified to the council within 24 hours, will be charged in cases where the referee on the day of the booking cancels a fixture. The town council will provide a free session at a suitable time.
So you don't get your money back, but you get a free session.
Right, well, forgive me, I haven't read and cross-referenced it all the way through, but we've got a specific provision at N on page 30 that might negate that or not. Perhaps officers could have another look just to make sure that there aren't any contradictions with that.
Yes, all right, thank you. Councillor Foster.
And again, I just repeat the point I made last time. Given that the number of changes that have been made here, it's understandable there's some minor typos in here. So I think it's important that we get it right. But it's I think having a number of eyes over it means it's helpful for us to get a good document. So well done, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Right, any further comments on this? So do we have a proposer to accept the document subject to the amendments discussed this evening? You propose we accept it, seconded, to be submitted to F&GP for confirmation of fees. All those in favour, please. No. Against? Abstention? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Right. What's the time? Moving on. Drove Road Bowls and Tennis. Right. Items for information now. Drove Road Bowls and Tennis survey feedback. The recommendation here note that members note the public feedback in this report. Does anybody have any comments on this? No, I mean, it all looks very positive that people seem to just generally accept the need and desirability of upgrading this lot. Councillor Strawn.
Yes, I wasn't absolutely too clear from looking at the question, the responses, how much of it was relating to the tennis courts and how much was to the bowls courts, because the comments seem to be more largely relating to tennis. And I understand that we were looking at that, but were there any comments specifically with regard to bowls? Because I'm just concerned that we've only got a partial survey or potentially misleading survey. And I'm just also concerned in a way, it was only 100 local residents got a physical copy, and I'm not sure how well it would have been publicised for the general public in Biggleswade, because 100 is a very limited number in the view of the size of the town.
I think the point was that it's the tennis court. We're not looking at really we're not really looking at any changes to the bowls club, are we? That's as it is. We're looking at changes to the tennis courts, in particular floodlighting, which some people might have objected to. Therefore, we surveyed the people living close to it. These are the 100 that were surveyed, presumably. I think.
That's right. We, as I said, we distributed 100 survey leaflets to dwellings immediately around the bowls and tennis club, and the rest was done online for that purpose, as you said.
Yeah. So that's why that number was surveyed. So
I appreciate that the immediate local residents were right to be surveyed. I'm just not concerned it's not necessarily wide enough, and also it's not clear to me whether the people would have realised it effectively. The survey is implying it's about both the bowls and the tennis facilities, and it's not wouldn't be clear to me as to whether people were looking at whether they did. I think it might have been helpful with hindsight, and everything's wonderful with hindsight, is that if it had actually been more specific, saying bowls and tennis separately and as a combined issue, because it looks like a combined survey, yet I'm not sure whether people would necessarily have taken into account bowls or vice versa.
Okay, well, I mean, we have Councillor Thomas Wigan to make a comment.
Yeah, it is all on the same site, though, isn't it? So that's the point. I think it's a joint survey because it's all on the same site. It's talking about the site and this split up.
Well, I appreciate it. Sorry, if I may come back.
And question 4 is the key one. Would you support the introduction of floodlighting and other improvements?
I accept that, but it's still, I accept it's the whole site, but equally, I just think it could have been a little bit clearer, because I'm not sure, but I think it was aimed at tennis, I think. But I just think with hindsight, it might have been worded differently.
Possibly. Peter.
Thank you.
Chief Executive, sorry.
Whatever, yeah. So, I mean, I think what we're trying to do here is, or what we were trying to do at the time, was we were very much debating the future of the site, focused primarily on the right-hand side of the site, which was what were the options connected to the tennis area. And this questionnaire focused predominantly on that, as opposed to what would you like to do with the whole site and what variations you might like. One of the areas that we were trying to address, which is what members have just highlighted, was in particular, if this will be picked up in the paper we're about to write, if we were to refresh the tennis courts to the right-hand side, and one of the options in that previous paper was to put floodlighting so that it could be used in early evenings, how might that land with the residents who were immediately impacted by that? And this report was really around trying to gauge the appetite for those local residents about whether or not they would be comfortable with that. And of course, we'd also have to go down planning and seek planning permission to do such a thing. It can be quite a sensitive thing to do something like that. And that's what we were focused upon. It wasn't the wider issues associated with the time.
Yeah. But it will have to go, it will have to go to planning permission anyway, won't it?
It would do, if that was an option.
If that's what we wish to do. Any further comments on this? Councillor Skilton.
So what are we going to do with this information now?
Well, the next, well, Peter perhaps could answer that now, what we're going to do now.
It goes back to the conversation we had at the start of the meeting. So effectively, on Tuesday, we're going to meet with the chair of F&GP and the chair of PLOS. We will co-author a paper going forward, and this is one of the most important projects within that. And that paper will make some recommendations. It will identify costs, and it will identify funding streams. Members will have a much deeper conversation associated with that and give us a direction of travel.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's we've now considered that. So moving on, what's the next item on the agenda? Allotments, policy, terms and conditions. Well, we have, this is really related, I suppose, is a follow on to the other two sets of terms and conditions. We have done this, but unfortunately, we were going to have a meeting with the Allotments Association a couple of weeks ago to just go through it with them and pick up any additional comments or ideas they might have to before we finalised the draft. But unfortunately, that meeting was cancelled, so we didn't get that feedback. So the document that should have come to this meeting is not coming to this meeting until we've just gone through it with the Allotment Association, and it will then come to the meeting possibly in PLOS in January, because there's nothing desperately urgent in it, I don't think, is there? Peter, please comment. Yes.
Yeah. So actually, there has been some early engagement connected to this, and there's been a number of iterations with the conversations with both the Allotment Association, but also with other allotment holders, because we mustn't recognise that about 48% of the people who live in the allotments are a part of the Allotment Association. So there's quite a lot of feedback. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even recently, there's been additional iterations of this. So we're working in partnership with a broad sense of stakeholders. Yep. And we're capturing all that content. But what we don't want to be doing is creating a document that doesn't have the generalized support of most people who are impacted by this. And that's what we're seeking to do.
Yeah.
And obviously, we'll bring that back to both the chair and deputy chair of PLOS to also give us some guidance before it comes back to this committee again. But we're trying to work in partnership with people.
Councillor Skilton.
Thank you. That's reassuring to hear. I've had some contact from members of the Allotment Association. I suspect probably officers and other members have when they saw it on the agenda, because they were worried that they hadn't seen a draft before it was coming to PLOS. But obviously, that the reason for that has now been made clear. I just think, just in relation to the comments around non-allotment association plot holders. I don't know how many of those you deal with regularly, but perhaps efforts might be made to make sure that a couple more could be represented, because I'm not sure information, this is from other plot holders I've spoken to, the information through the channels for the non-allotment association holders is getting through to all plot holders, as they obviously don't have the email that the allotment association does.
Yeah, Peter, please.
I respond to that. I think when we get to a point in time where we've got a clean document, I think it would be sensible to do two things. Number one, obviously to engage further with the Allotment Association. But number two, we have the contact addresses for the other people who have an allotment in most cases. So let's use that and share it more broadly, yeah, before we bring it back to this discussion.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, actually, yes, to send a final draft, if you like, or a draft to the non-association members and see what it's, especially if we're not going to look at it again till January.
Can I just clarify, we followed due process through the whole process of reviewing the policy document.
Yeah.
And we've worked closely with the BA, and they were given a copy of the policy document prior to the PLOS meeting. Yeah.
Oh yes, they were. Yeah.
And they returned that with observations. Yeah, and that was passed on to members.
I have seen comments on it, but we haven't had a chance to discuss it with them, have we?
Yeah, so obviously, the observations are there, but we'll obviously work closely with the BA.
Yes.
And obviously to get, so everybody's happy with the policy document. There's lots of changes within there, and we've got to make sure that we work very closely with them, and we've got we're happy. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, I think. Well, Councillor, didn't you have a comment, Councillor Skilton? Were you going to say something?
Yeah, sorry, just about contacting all the plot holders for their comments on the terms and conditions. That would probably generate a lot of correspondence for officers. So I think maybe there might be some compromise, and I don't know whether it would be appropriate, but to my mind, it would probably be quite good to encourage more plot holders to join the Allotment Association. So there is a channel of communication from the Town Council and from the Allotment Association to make sure everyone's interests are fairly heard.
Suggested additional compromise.
Yes, please do.
Which I think is, we have a good turnout of the allotment meetings that we have. Yeah, let's publicise it even more. Yeah, and bring people to that debate. Yeah, and then more people can come along and we can listen to their voice.
That sounds like a great idea. Thank you.
Yes, we can need to think further about this. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I was just going to ask if any documents are shared with allotment holders or the association, can those documents also be shared with the members of this committee? Because otherwise, if allotment holders contact us, we won't know what on earth they're talking about. Thank you.
We will do that.
Yes, we could do it. We could share. I don't know if you agree with the allotment association comments on it. That document we have with their comments on it.
What we don't want to do is to be in a position where members aren't aware of the evolving picture.
Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I think in this case, if we'd have had the meeting last week with the allotment group and the people who want to come along, we'd have been a bit further along, and we would have shared something, but all the information was muddled and it came late, and it was just unfortunate. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
So we decided to delay it till January, and that's fine. I think that'll work better, and we'll have probably 1 or 2 allotment meetings before then.
Yes, we should have. Yes.
I'm fairly sure the chair of the allotment association was happy with some of it, but he decided to ask for some changes on behalf of the allotment association.
Yeah.
And if anybody else wants to ask or put something else in, I'm sure we'll look at it.
Yes, it's certainly not final by as yet. Well, so you're going to look at sharing the documents we've got so far on this with other members of the committee then? Yes, fine. Thank you, Peter. Right, moving on. Public open session. There are no members of the public. Do we have any people online, Catherine? No, so we don't need to worry about that. Exempt items, there are none.